So in the few minutes we have, I want to cover just two things. One is what you guys should be thinking about when you set up LLCs, and two is just current regulatory climate. I'll do this very quickly. So we've talked structure. Now let's assume we got to do the agreement. So a lot of our clients say, hey, don't worry, I have an agreement, I have a friend do it. It's great. I've covered all the things that are important. It says what, Phil and I, says we both 50-50, and it says we have to agree on stuff for management, and that's great. And we're done. So thanks for all the advice. And I said, well, what happens if, I don't know, I just say, Phil's really good at this, I'm not. I just go sit on a beach for the next 50 years. Do I still get my 50%? They're like, oh, wait, yeah, you do. Worse, do I still get to basically veto everything that Phil wants to do from my beach house? Apparently I do. And what if I steal from the firm? Can you kick me out? Not explicitly. So think of an LLC agreement as effectively like a full employment agreement plus a governance agreement plus a divorce agreement, right? So what I mean by that is on the front end, clearly needs to cover how much money we have to put in. And again, we can get complicated on different allocations. We can do a bonus pool that try and keeps the character. But how much money we put in, what's our percentages? That's the easy stuff. The economics are the easy stuff. The hard stuff is, all right, how do we deal with governance? Like what if it's both of us? The most difficult governance is two people, right? Because there's no tiebreaker. And so do we just say we have to agree on everything? Do we get fancy and have a Texas shotgun provision if we can't agree? But you get into governance. The other thing you want to get into, what are our duties? Shouldn't Phil and I at least say, hey, either we know this is all we're going to do, it's our full time, we owe each other fiduciary duties, or maybe we're clear, just devote some time but go do other things. And normally when you're building a prop firm business, we typically see two classes of equity. We see the sort of people that started the firm, call them Class A, and then Class B are the other people that say, hey, you're a great trader, we want to make you a partner, and forget the eat what you kill deal, we want to incent you, so we're going to give you 3% of the whole firm. But we're only doing that because you're a great employee, right? Now you're going to be a partner. So we want to make sure you have full duties, fiduciary duties, full-time, non-competes, non-solicits, everything you'd see in an employment agreement, we want to be in the LLC agreement. Or in our case, we want to agree, do we owe each other these duties or do we not? And so that's very important. But the biggest thing is, and intellectual property, making sure the firm owns it. The biggest thing is, what happens if one of us stops working and does something wrong? And so that's the buy-sell. You want to be very clear on, usually when you set up a firm, and we're all active, we're only getting equity because we're active. Once we cease to be active, for the most part, got to buy them out. Go ahead.
Can I ask what you mean by active? Because I know active and passive, and depending on...
Yeah, so I'm talking about this not for regulatory purposes, although I'll get to that, but I'm really talking about this like, Phil isn't just giving it to me because he likes me, he's giving it to me because I add value to the firm. So whether I'm a trader, a lawyer, or a manager. And so I'm adding value by working at the firm. Once I stop doing that, whether voluntarily or involuntarily, then my benefit of the bargain is gone. And Phil's like, well, Lance, you're not showing up anymore. Like, I don't want you holding 50% of my equity. So that's where the buy-sell comes in.
And to confirm that, so that individual has to be actively participating rather than someone on their behalf.
Correct, usually. And again, you can actually agree to, putting aside the regulatory, agree to almost whatever you want. But in a traditional prop firm, right, he and I would both say we have to all be active. And if, let's assume, God forbid, death, disability, I just go sit on a beach and stop working, I resign and just say, you know what, Phil, I don't want to partner with you, I want to go over here. Or maybe if there's 3 people and I get fired, right, all of that should lead to a repurchase provision. And then the question is, what's the price? And some people say fair market value, and they throw it to, a lot of people used to throw it to an arbitrator or an appraiser. That's dangerous, because I can find an appraiser that says you're worth $1, maybe not $1, probably book. And I can find someone saying you're worth 20 times book, right? So the spread on a valuation of a prop firm is wide. And so throwing it to an appraiser, in my mind, I call it the appraisal lottery. Who knows what you're going to get back? So normally we say we want book value, capital account balance, under the theory that, let's assume, I walk away and Phil is definitely going to buy me back because he doesn't want me owning 50% of the company. If I have a fair market value buyout, effectively I can force a liquidity event by leaving that Phil doesn't have by staying. Because I now say, hey, fair market value, Phil's left not only figuring out what that price is, but he's left financing it while he sits with the business and hopes one day he has a liquidity event. So a lot of people think, oh, fair market value is fair, but in a lot of our cases, you have to be there for a sale to get it. And And if you're not there, it's speculative. We do have some clients that are in the middle. They say, listen, you should give them some fair market value. We understand Lance, the financing liquidity, but that's sort of the deal. We don't like going with the appraisal ladder. We like, let's come up with a formula. And usually we want a multiple that's lower than market, just in case market moves, but at least has a rational, whatever times EBITDA. And we usually want to, for a trading firm at least, we want to smooth it out over a couple of years, because we had a lot of clients that had problems after 2008. A lot of people retired at 2008, right? A lot of the prop firms had the best year, maybe a year they'll never have. People mark the high. And so what we're careful about is don't let people mark the high, and we use a look forward and a look back to sort of limit and smooth out the returns. But that's very important. We do have some clients that say, listen, let's start with where you get to buy out, but at some point you're a founder, and now let's turn a repurchase provision into a retirement provision. Let's maybe start buying you out a little bit, because we still need to incent other people coming in, and we don't want too much equity overhang. But hey, Lance, you've been here for 15 years, you started the firm, let's let you keep a certain percentage forever. Now, the flip side of that is I'm retired forever. I'm not starting another firm. But so we get into these complicated situations. But thinking about the fact that for most firms, put aside people who write checks, just for the sake of writing checks, you want to make sure you claw back your equity, or at least know you're not doing it. That gets into our regulatory issue, which is, so people always say, why are prop firms not regulated? The answer is because sometimes they're structured appropriately to not be registered, and somebody that they just didn't register. So for the most part, if you look at the regulatory regimes across the U.S., at least for trading, most time they're trying to regulate two types of people: advisors, people that run hedge funds, and then they try and regulate dealers, at least on the equity side. So if you arrange yourself so that I'm not a dealer on mostly the equity side, because there's no dealer category for futures. Let's not get in the swap dealer right now. Then I know if I'm a dealer, maybe I have to register, or maybe I want to register because I get better treatment. But on the future side, usually they're trying to say, I'm not a commodity pool operator, I'm not a CTA, I'm not an advisor, okay? The advisory part seems intuitive, right? At a true prop firm where we're all active, even though, listen, there's some precedent out there with the SEC would literally say that if we have a joint account both trading, I'm his advisor and he's my advisor. No one actually follows that, nor has the SEC done anything on that. So for the most part, if everybody's active trading the firm's capital, they're going to take the position that there's no advisor. Okay, now introduce some passive capital. Now you open up the door of, once you have a passive, well, maybe someone's advising that person, because in a hedge fund with a bunch of passive, they think there's an advisor. And then you get into this whole pool concept of, maybe I'm a commodity pool, because the definition of commodity pool is essentially an investment trust syndicate, a similar form of enterprise, right? And so most people say, as a prop firm with everybody active, definitionally we're not a pool. But that's a sort of interp that you're taking without an exemption, which people used to have. But I will tell you, the market generally takes that. But as soon as you start introducing passives, that starts to be a much more difficult position to take. And how many and how is sort of beyond the scope of this, but just know, people are comfortable. If we're all active, hard to say we have an advisor, hard to say there's a pool. As soon as you introduce that passive, you've got a problem.